I'm Claire, and this is my mate Anna. 10 years ago, Anna and I drove a Ford Fiesta 10,000 kilometres from the UK to West Africa. We'd bought it off eBay for less than £250. We had no service history and almost no mechanical know-how. The West Africa we saw is a different one now, and today's politics would make this trip a challenge to repeat. Our breakdowns were outnumbered only by adventures, and we got way more mileage from our car than we'd ever hoped for. 10 years later, this is our story. In our last episode, we were on the road again after having the Isuzu's gearbox sort of repaired. We were now heading east towards Alleg along Mauritania's Route de l'Espoir, which loosely and aptly translated to the Road of Hope, but perhaps not for reasons intended.
We've left Nouakchott finally, and the troop is nice, the troop is going well, and we've been stopped quite a few times so far.
By donkeys and goats. Oh, and the gendarme.
Yeah. Gendarme. They want everything we have in the car. They ask us how much the car is. They want to buy it.
How much is your iPod worth?
Yeah, how much the iPod. And they want to buy the camel. What's that? Camel. What's that about?
Jamel.
But yeah, we're heading towards Kifa. It's going to be a long ride.
And we may not even make it as far
We probably won't make it, but we'll push in.
What, 8
far as we can.
checkpoints so far maybe?
8 checkpoints, yep.
We've got 30 to do.
The gendarmes were Mauritania's military police, with checkpoints set up every 20 kilometres or so along the Route de l'Espoir. Each stop required long interrogations of our paperwork, as well as requests for cadeau, the French word for gift, and a thinly veiled term for bribes. It was 600 kilometres from Nouakchott to Kifa, and for security reasons, the gendarmes would not let us pass their checkpoints after 6 p.m. The road was terrible, and the time needed for checkpoints unknown. This, together with Alleg being the only sizable town we could stay in halfway to Kifa, meant we needed to be careful about losing time, only to be stuck in the middle of nowhere at nightfall.
The road is alright here, but it's been absolute rough. Potholes everywhere. I think we've crashed a bit, but we'll see.
Aside from the security situation, military police, and poor road condition, the other disadvantage to driving east further into Mauritania was the total lack of available fuel on the way.
What's this? A petrol station?
It's our petrol station.
Lies. All lies.
They never have what we want.
No. Which is basically petrol.
Yeah, they're all empty. Good job, we got jerry cans. Oh, that's baguette, but I'm a little baguette. It's jerry cans. We have 60 litres of petrol and tyres. We have brand new spanking tyres.
While leaded fuel had been phased out in Europe 20 years before our trip, it was the only non-diesel option available in the whole of Mauritania. Even then, it could only be found in Nouakchott. We'd filled our leaky plastic jerry cans and hoped we'd done the maths on our fuel consumption right so we could make the 1,000 kilometres to Mali with what we had stashed in the car.
History.
All white and orange.
The longer we drove seeing little more than sand dunes and cattle, the harder it got to take any potential threats from Al-Qaeda-affiliated terrorists seriously. Of course, this was exactly what all the gendarme checkpoints were supposed to be protecting us against, rather than just helping to offload our pre-loved goods. The risk was from Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, which was born as an Islamic extremist group in 1990s Algeria. With Algeria to our north and a border running through sparsely populated and barren Sahara Desert, it should come as no surprise that the region's borders are porous. This Al-Qaeda affiliate had coordinated less than 10 attacks in Mauritania in the 5 years prior to our visit, and was only just building its present-day notoriety. Nevertheless, its main source of income was ransom money obtained through kidnapping Westerners, and therefore something we'd rather avoid.
And all of a sudden this stop sign in English.
What's that about? Probably so that they can come out and shoot us and steal our car. Al-Qaeda country. Wow. I mean, it does look pretty threatening. Look, there's a dude with something on his head. He must be a terrorist. I mean, what else would you do out here?
But nope. It was just another gendarme checkpoint. If I don't sound like I was taking this whole thing seriously, it's likely because neither of us felt the need to get worked up about something that statistically seemed to have a pretty low probability of occurring. Anna and I had met years prior in Brazil, where kidnappings annually number in the hundreds. We'd travelled together in Syria and Iraq a year and a half earlier, where we'd learned the absurdity of typecasting whole countries based on a few rogue maniacs. And besides, the previous year there had been more than 30 people killed with guns every single day in the US, and no one was telling us not to travel there. Risk, we decided, was therefore relative, as long as we were sensible.
So we're now driving through Aleg, a middle of the nowhere town in Mauritania, in our bid to make it to Mali somehow.
We had finally made it the 260 kilometres to Aleg, and with checkpoints and dodgy roads, it had taken most of the day. It was time to pull over and decide whether we needed to weigh anchor, or if we could drive on and still find a place to sleep before sunset.
So we decided to push on.
As exciting as this town seems.
Yeah, we need to hit the other place.
Oh my god, 2 petrol stations?
In the land of Mauritania, we're not allowed to be on the roads after 6 o'clock.
It was 350 kilometres from Aleg to Kiefer, the next major town en route. There was no way we were going to be able to make it that same day, but the boys were told in Aleg that there was an auberge an hour's drive ahead, and we were hoping that not only did it exist, but that we'd also be able to find it.
The cow. It's like the third one in the last 50 kilometres maybe. Still driving through the Sahara.
Trying to make it somewhere safe before nightfall. It's a bit of a mission. Tell you that much.
Try as we might, the longer we drove, the less likely it seemed that any auberge actually existed.
Ça va?
Oh, stop.
For every dot with a name above it on the map, we found nothing more than a couple of gendarme checkpoints and small villages scattered in the sand. If there was an auberge out here, it should have been pretty obvious to see, and as we got closer to nightfall, the time had come to throw another spanner in the works.
So, we're in Mauritania by the side of the road. Even the goats are so bored that they've decided to stand on 2 legs to amuse themselves. Anna, meanwhile, has decided to devour a bag of dried dates to amuse herself. Haven't you, Anna? Oh, you found it. Nice. What are the boys doing? What could be going on here? We thought they were just too stoned to drive any faster, but apparently something's wrong with the gearbox. There's a hole in the exhaust.
With 350 kilometres down and another 650 to go until the border with Mali, the Isuzu's repairs were looking to be temporary at best.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you right now?
5.
You didn't even ask me whether one was good or one was bad.
5's in the middle, isn't it?
Did you find it?
No, car's eating it.
Uh-oh. I saw it fell down there.
I heard it.
Well, the rest of your car's been put together with half of the required bolts, so maybe you don't need it.
The Isuzu would eventually get going again, but not before we'd resigned ourselves to the likelihood that we needed a backup plan for somewhere to spend the night. Meanwhile, Mauritania continued to find ways to surprise and delight.
We are currently in the most exciting of towns in Mauritania. Events of the last half hour include getting a big red spot on my head from being attacked by a stale baguette, and we have just discovered the best town name in all of Mauritania, Creamy Rag. And they said there was nothing in the Sahara.
As nightfall drew nearer and the desert all the more encompassing, we realised the closest thing to company, and therefore security for the evening, were the gendarmes. Despite them seeming more of a hindrance than a help so far, we would camp by one of their checkpoints. After all, they'd be checking vehicles and keeping watch the entire night, so using them as our lookout didn't seem too unwise, as long as we managed to avoid them pilfering too much of our stuff.
Right, we're on the road again.
Yeah. We just slept last night with not with them, at the gendarme stop, pitched up our tents. Yeah, they loved it. Chilling out with some foreigners around our campfire in the evening.
They loved it. We were just sitting there having din-dins next to the police stop, the hut. And yeah, there's just people coming all the time.
And then old mate that we bumped into in Nouakchott suddenly drove past and came over being like, tea? Do you have tea? Like, 400 kilometers away? Sure, tea. English tea, not tea Mauritanian. He's like, that's fine. Even though the other day he was going, no, only tea Mauritania. Tea English. Bad.
He loved it. So we've had breakfast and it's 9 o'clock and we're on the road again.
And the boys kept getting asked for cadeau and they would say, no, it's not a Cadillac, it's an Isuzu.
Camping with the gendarme had taught us some interesting things. Firstly, car imports were big business. Days earlier, we'd met a Senegalese guy in Nouakchott who'd picked up an old Mercedes in Switzerland and was driving it all the way to landlocked Mali, where it would be sold for a huge profit and turned into a taxi. This was the guy who'd asked us for tea when we met him again as he passed through the roadblock we were camped at. We'd met not just him, but convoys of old Mercedes passing through the night and driven by guys employed in the business. Second, we had a major advantage with the gendarme being female. While we'd passed most roadblocks so far with a few token words in Arabic and handing out grins instead of gifts, Tom and Duncan were being harassed far more often. We'd had a social evening with the gendarme who sat around our campfire being pleasant and polite. Duncan, meanwhile, had spent the evening dodging requests for cadeau by pretending he thought they were asking if his car was a Cadillac.
A bunch of dudes hanging out with their hoods. Some dude with a plastic bag on his head and a bunch of baguettes.
Nice. Maybe we should stop for baguette.
If we see some baguette, yeah.
Yep, that's what Anna took from that. We were now driving towards Ayoun à la Trousse, having refueled the car from our jerry cans that morning. While the road was still just as awful, the scenery was now gradually starting to change.
Through our filthy windscreen you can see mountains. It's been really, really cool mountains. It's a bit muggy, can't really see. We were looking out for Al-Qaeda training camps.
Yeah, probably on the top of the mountains.
We reckon there might be one right there.
Why not? So, sand dunes this morning, mountain also this morning.
Still morning.
Still waiting.
10:18.
They're really cool mountains though, look at the tops of them.
We were dreaming up locations for Al-Qaeda training camps in scenic and remote spots that we really just wanted to hang out in ourselves. Too bad we had a fear of stopping in case the Isuzu broke down and couldn't be started again. We did manage a few small stops, spent idling on the side of the road while we leapt out of the car for much needed supplies on the way.
Oh, I killed a baguette.
For all the negatives the French had brought to Africa, we were nevertheless thankful they'd left behind the baguette. No matter where we went or how remote, it was easier to get a crunchy fresh loaf than a can of Coca-Cola, and that was saying something.
Definitely in the Sahara.
Definitely still in the Sahara.
We had a long day of driving still ahead of us, even though we'd only be covering 400 kilometers to reach Ayoun.
Move it. What the heck? Village over there.
Driving was slow as we had a never-ending number of cattle and potholes to navigate our way around. Getting through the towns was also painful thanks to gendarme checkpoints and creative driving causing congestion.
Right, so we reached another town now. We're just... It's
Where
a really cool spot.
Driving on the wrong side of the road.
Oh yeah, there's oncoming traffic.
And the longer we spent in our own company, the worse our banter was getting.
Travelled on the road from hell.
The road of hope.
Yeah. It's the road of hope, but the road of hope has little
And then
hope.
I hope I don't get a blowout, or I hope the rim isn't so badly dented that we fuck the wheel bearings, and I hope that we don't get stopped by Al-Qaeda, and I hope that we make it to Mali before the end of the month, and I wish I could just go climb that mountain and watch the sunset
There's
instead.
a really pretty mountain behind us. It's a bit late now, I can't really film that way, but
And
yeah.
I hope that this road gradually turns to some kind of usable tarmac. Look at them go, here we go.
But this is luxury. This road is good compared to how it's been. It's been awful. Absolute shit road. Rather drive in the bushes. to be
Actually, it's
honest.
been heaven when we've been able to drive on the side of the road, next to the road, in the sand, rather than on the collection of potholes that they call the road of hope. Oh, we're getting some cool mountains.
But pretty sweet.
Like a table mountain.
Yeah. Oh,
gendarme.
police.
There was always the gendarme.
Another checkpoint. Gendarme. And trying to make it to Ayoun before dark. evil, evil dark. With ladies everywhere.
The closer we got to Ayoun, the closer we got to Mali. While the risk of Al-Qaeda in West Africa was thought to be greatest in Mauritania at the time, Mauritania has been one of the least impacted by Al-Qaeda in the region since, and the last recorded incident would take place the same year we visited. So, was it all those gendarme checkpoints that squashed Al-Qaeda? 4 months later, American Special Forces killed Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. It's alleged that amongst his paperwork was a non-aggression pact Al-Qaeda and the Mauritanian government had reached. The reality is anyone's guess.
So I've had a crazy day of driving Mauritania's exciting roads. We're just about to get to Ayoun, which is sort of the last stop before the road south down to Mali. And look at all the pretty mountains. This is the Sahara Desert at its best. Roads nowhere near as bad as earlier.
No. Good roads.
Really good roads. Whee! And you could almost be in Monument Valley. Not that I've ever been there.
The sun had just set as we approached Ayoun. It was time to pitch our tents and find some food before breaking for the border early the next morning.
Look at that, the moon and the mountains. Go. So, we're right near the border with Mali, and as you can see, it's really happening out here. Got some exciting structures over here.
We didn't really make it to the auberge last night. We made it to the courtyard of a hotel where we camped.
For the privilege of €6 each.
And got used for the exhaust pancakes well.
Oh yeah. Boys were working on the exhaust this morning.
Yeah.
More cattle. It's really happening in this town.
Yes.
Ooh. Hello. This might be the first country I've been in where I never actually learned how to pronounce the currency.
Yeah.
Oogie doogie doogies.
Oogie doogie doogies.
Oogie doogies.
For the record, it was Ugia, but that no longer mattered, for we were about to enlist plenty of spectators to help us bump start the Isuzu the rest of the way to Bamako, and we'll see you in Mali next episode.
Hi, present day Claire here. New episodes will be uploaded every Sunday, so hit subscribe if you'd like to be notified when it's time to watch. Thanks and see you next time.